Our meeting today to go over our jazz lesson, specifically the vocabulary words. We are looking to check for student understanding. We need them to be able to identify the movement that they see, define it, and then be able to execute it as well. So looking at our benchmarks for dance. So dance, we don't have specific benchmarks, but one of our best indicators of where our students are at is how many years of experience that they have in dance. And we had them go through a dance background assessment, and when we're looking at this data, 50%, so over half of our students in our classroom have only had, or less than 2 years experience, and the vast majority, which is 31%, have only had, or never had dance before. So when we started our unit, we needed to make sure we addressed the problem of the students not being able to understand any of the vocabulary being thrown at them. So when we made our lesson plan, the main things that we picked out for this specific vocabulary stuff is we wanted the students to be able to remember the vocabulary. We wanted them to be able to apply the knowledge and execute technical dance skills. And we want them to be able to analyze the effective use of dance elements in their practice and their performance. So that's the main pull-aways from our learning targets in our lesson plan for our students. So the next thing we had was we built this jazz ID quiz, and we worked as like a backwards design plan, and we wanted to look at what we wanted the students to learn at the end before getting to kind of make our lesson plan or our unit. So when we look at this, what was our end goal for the assessment? And did we think our lesson or exit ticket accomplished that goal? So you guys, what do you think? Did we accomplish that goal?
Yes. I mean, the execution aspect of it, I think we're still kind of working on, but my kids are definitely able to define and identify. We struggled a little with execution on some of those skills.
Yeah, and I think for us, just in class, I focused more on what is the skill as opposed to defining the skill. Mm-hmm. So when I got to the results, which I know we're not there yet, but their identification was way better than looking at the actual definitions and being able to put those.
Right, let's go ahead and get there. So in our actual data, so from our Jazz ID quiz, when we're going through it, we had a pretty good understanding as far as the identification. I agree with you. The students were able to identify with 90% or higher. We were really hovering at more of a 97% rate as far as identification of each vocabulary term. Where they struggled was the defining it or finding the definition for it. And I think a lot of this is the wording of the definition.
Yes. Well, they're long, so I think some of them just
True. They looked at the first couple words and they were confused. So when we're looking at it, the ones that were a little bit lower percentage of students' knowledge, dig. Dig is one of the easiest terms for the students to learn, and we were below a 90% rate, so we were at 89% there. And then the three-step turn, we were also at 89%. Because you're expecting the word three-step to be in there, and it really didn't say that. What they were saying is basically step to the side, cross in front with that left, and then step out to the side. So there was 3 steps that were identified in the definition, but it didn't say the word 3 steps. So I think that was one of those things where the students were rushing through it, and they really weren't looking at the definitions fully. And then the last one was the jazz square. So I think the jazz square, it's just one of the harder Dance 1 technical things that we were asking for them to be able to identify. And that's another thing with the definition for me that I think the students were struggling with as well, just because it is wordy and they like maybe cut it off with all of that. Is that what you guys were seeing in your classroom?
Yes.
Okay, so looking ahead at things, we think we're identifying what the way we designed our lesson plan there was great. The definition we maybe need to look at adjusting and helping the students understand how to get that. Do you have any suggestions of where to go with that lesson or how to make the definition part better?
I think for me in introducing the vocab, we showed videos similar to what was in the assessment, or if I had student aides, they demonstrated similar to the videos that were in the assessment, and we just read very quickly through, and we didn't really come back to the definition. So we talk through daily, this is what you're doing, and we're using the terminology that's in the definitions, but I just don't think that they were necessarily connecting those things. So at least for us, coming back to a focus of the written definition as opposed to just speaking it. And then as far as the assessment itself goes, I don't know if which I think it assesses the same thing, but maybe giving them fewer answer choices for the definitions, maybe not for the terms, but for the definitions.
So not having to scroll as
might
much.
have been, they're just looking at like 4 or 5 as opposed to however many, 15, 20 definitions.
Yeah, that'd be
So
good.
they actually read it.
Have time to read.
Yes.
Dance one.
I agree.
I agree. We did just like a pre-assessment on the words, identify which ones you've heard of, which ones you might have heard of, which ones you haven't. So that kind of very quickly told me where we were at, and then we did same thing, videos, demos of the terms beforehand. But I think finding ways to connect like the words in the definition to what you are actually doing, I think is where the disconnect is. Because if, sometimes the kids are able, like they know how to do a jazz square, but they don't, if you ask them to write down how to
can't
do
do
the
that.
jazz square, they don't know.
Right.
Which is what a lot of this definition is.
Right.
Stepping in front and back, so.
I agree.
So then maybe adding an element where they actually have to
See the words.
well,
or
and
the
just
definition.
or even write
Yeah,
and
like,
describe
tell
what
you,
they're
like,
doing.
how
So even if it
to
doesn't
do
look
it.
exactly like this, you can say, here's the definition that we gave you, here's the definition that you've written yourself.
Maybe making this more of like our warm-ups or like a part of our beginning lesson. I also thought about adding a game. So a lot of it is them seeing the definition on a piece of card, so we can maybe separate them in 4 groups, have the words on a wall, and then they have to go and get the vocabulary word on the definition of the vocabulary word, and that way they're kind of lining it up and making it more of a fun game, and also seeing it rather than just hearing it.
Well, and we didn't do it in class, but I sent it out one of those Kahoots. Some of them were videos, some of them were definitions. So maybe just doing the definitions, because it seems like that's where they struggled.
Or at least going back to this dig, 3-step turn, jazz square,
Yeah.
making sure that those are the ones that they get. In
The
those
ones with
definitions.
the I guess more feet specific language.
Yes.
That all say cross, that all say step.
True.
That all
That's true. Okay, those are great things that we can look at later. Okay, so looking at our lesson and the time that we took to get the students to understand the vocabulary, do we think the students had ample time to practice these skills? So I think one of the things that you said is they were okay with the defining. We're saying that, well, they're at least at a B rating at that. But maybe being able to do the skill, execute
do the
it.
skill, I definitely could have spent a little bit of extra time on the execution portion of it, and just kind of, it's mostly the skills, like our weight transfer skills, understanding what part of the foot, because I mean, they can all do the skill. Like they can jazz walk,
Maybe
but
just
are
not
they
well.
jazz walking well is the
Not look like a robot doing
question.
that,
Like are they dancing on the right part of the foot? Are they extending from the right portion of the leg? So, in regards to execution, I mean, I should maybe rephrase that. Like they look fine, but there's
like they're
definitely-
performing the skill.
Yes,
They're at
it's
a
just-
dance 1 level.
Yes.
It's just
Which
not
moving to
refined.
dance 2, we would want it a little bit better than that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess then maybe if you're looking at like vertically aligning this to an upper level, you would say dance 1, let's focus on, you need to just know what the skill
looks
is,
like.
you need to be able to define it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, do it. And I think we do that inherently, but just for the sake of an assessment, maybe the assessment moving upward is more about how well are you executing the skill as opposed to do you just know what it is. And I think the teaks lend themselves
Support
to that.
I agree with that. So is there anything else moving forward, and let's say for next year, what we would plan to do? So we've already talked about maybe seeing the definition more, maybe enhancing our knowledge of being able to execute them. Is there anything else that you guys were seeing?
I think for next year it'd be something that would maybe help again connect that definition, like what I'm doing with what the words that I'm seeing would be to add like a teaching component of it, even at Dance 1, being able to like, I need to know
Teach
that
it
you
to a
know
small
how
group.
to teach it to a small group, or that you're able to verbally communicate what
That's
you're
good.
doing. Because if you're able to verbally communicate it, again, a lot of these definitions end up being just that. You
Yeah.
know, like the grapevine, for example, step side, step back, step side, again, dig. Like if you don't know that that's what you're even doing, you're not going to be able to connect that this definition goes with
to
that movement
Video, yeah.
or that, yeah.
Okay.
So I think that would be something I would add, would be a teaching
I like that.
component,
Okay.
even for Dance 1.
Well, thanks, guys. I think we have a good understanding where we're at and where we can go moving forward in next year. Thanks for coming in.